Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, guys, from the Pop Complex. As you can see, things around here are starting to look a whole lot like Christmas because there's a soft snow beginning to gently fall here in the Pop Complex. Today, guys, I've got something special for you just in time for the holiday season. That's right, I'm going to be counting down and ranking my top 10 personal favorite film adaptations of Charles Dickens' 1843 classic novel, A Christmas Carol, the story of the villainous Ebenezer Scrooge and his redemption story. So ever since the beginning of cinema, there have been literally dozens and dozens of adaptations of this Christmas classic. So I've chosen my top 10 favorites, and they may not be your favorites, or they may not really be considered the best all-time versions of all time, but these are my top 10 personal favorites, guys. So let's get started, but before we do, I want to remind you guys that the Pop Complex is the place for toy collecting and retro pop culture. So if you would, hit that like button if you like this video, share it out to your friends and family this holiday season, and most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell to be notified. It doesn't cost you anything, guys, and you will be notified anytime the Pop Complex uploads a new video. So without further ado, let's get into it. My name is Matt, and this is the Pop Complex. Number 10, Scrooged, 1988, starring Bill Murray. This adaptation probably strays the farthest from the original source material of Charles Dickens' original 1843 A Christmas Carol, but it's still considered as an adaptation of the same story. Made in 1988 and directed by Richard Donner, yes, that Richard Donner, this dark and quirky comedic retelling stars Bill Murray as a greedy, callous television executive, Frank Cross, who forces all of his employees to work through the Christmas holiday to produce a Christmas Eve TV special. Frank's slave-driving ways and disregard of his employees finally gets supernatural attention after he blows off his estranged girlfriend Claire and fires a subordinate executive played by Bobcat Goldthwait just for disagreeing with him. Frank is first visited by the ghost of his former mentor, Lou Hayward, who died 7 years prior in the spirit of Jacob Marley from the original A Christmas Carol. Then he is visited by the three traditional Christmas Carol ghosts. The ghost of Christmas Past, a crazy taxi driver played by the New York Dolls' David Johansen. The ghost of Christmas Present, a physically abusive fairy played by Carol Caine. And the ghost of Christmas Future, a grim reaper with a TV for a face. After learning the error of his ways, Frank interrupts the live Christmas special to apologize to everyone live on air. Dark and quirky, this untraditional retelling is a Christmas comedic classic. Number 9, Scrooge, 1970, starring Albert Finney. This adaptation is a straight musical and completely behaves like one. British actor Albert Finney portrays the titular Ebenezer Scrooge in this musical adaptation of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. He was only 34 at the time and wears a lot of makeup to make him look much older. His performance is overly exaggerated at times, maintaining the feel of a Broadway stage musical. His portrayal of Scrooge is a twisted, hunched, and at times feeble miser. What's there more to say about this adaptation? It has 11 musical numbers with very catchy songs and Broadway-esque choreography. The standout here is this film's signature song, Thank You Very Much. Try not to get that stuck in your head. Oh, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is the ghost of Jacob Marley. Number 8, Scrooge, 1935, starring Seymour Hicks. This version makes my list as it holds the distinction of being the first non-silent or talkie adaptation of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. This adaptation heavily evokes the dreamlike quality of German Expressionism with its use of haunting shadows and long, irregular shapes and lines. This style actually works well here because isn't A Christmas Carol, after all, just an ancient Christmas horror story? You know, with a happy, heartwarming ending. Sir Seymour Hicks, who had previously played the role of Scrooge a couple thousand times on stage and in a 1913 silent film adaptation, plays the role here as very harsh, vile, and curmudgeonly, and is very effective for such an early adaptation of the character. The odd points of the film that stick out now when compared to the dozens of later adaptations are that we don't actually see the spirits on screen, with the exception of the Ghost of Christmas Present. Jacob Marley and the Ghost of Christmas Past are both disembodied voices, and the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is nothing but a shadow and a pointed finger. The surviving prints of this film have not held up all that well to time. There are many stronger adaptations on this list, but this one was landmark as the first proper sound adaptation. Number 7. A Muppet Christmas Carol, 1992, starring Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge. This charming adaptation follows Charles Dickens' classic story rather closely, but of course leaves room for some classic Muppet humor and charm. The story is narrated by Gonzo as Charles Dickens and Rizzo the Rat. Michael Caine is usually top-notch in his roles, but here our beloved Cockney chap doesn't quite fill out the villainous presence of an Ebenezer Scrooge. This may be due to the fact that it is a family Muppets movie and they didn't really want to go too malevolent with the character, or maybe it's just Michael Caine's entire kind demeanor. With a fairly straightforward adaptation, most of the classic characters are portrayed by Muppets. Kermit the Frog as Bob Cratchit, Miss Piggy as Emily Cratchit, Robin the Frog as Tiny Tim, Statler and Waldorf share a dual role as Jacob and Robert Marley, Fozzie the Bear as Fozziewig, Bunsen and Beaker as the charity collectors, and many, many more. This version is fun and family friendly. Check it out. It's the Muppets. Number 6. A Christmas Carol, 1938, starring Reginald Owen. Coming just 3 years after the 1935 Seymour Hicks sound adaptation, this adaptation is more glamorized and well-preserved than its predecessor. I couldn't find the information about this film's budget. I would guess it had a larger one than the 1935 version, as it was made by American studio MGM, already well established at that point, versus the 1935 version being the first production to come from the British film company Twickenham. Like I said before, this version is more Hollywood and glamorized, probably in an attempt to be more family-friendly. Curiously, some of the film's darker aspects are omitted from this version, such as Scrooge's fiancée Belle, who leaves him in his youth, the emaciated child apparitions of want and ignorance, and the characters of the undertaker, the laundress, and the maid stealing Scrooge's belongings after his death. Lionel Barrymore was originally chosen for the role of Ebenezer Scrooge in this adaptation, but he turned down the role. After years of portraying Scrooge on the radio and seeing his performance as Henry Potter in It's a Wonderful Life, kinda makes me wonder what could have been. Reginald Owen was 51 years old in this adaptation, but he is still clearly under some heavy aging makeup. His performance is not as menacing as others on this list, causing him to come off as more of a grouchy old man who just wants everyone off his lawn, rather than a sinister, black-hearted literary villain. A light-hearted adaptation, but well worth the watch. Number 5. A Flintstones Christmas Carol, 1994. I first discovered this clever little adaptation sometime on TV in the late 90s. This 1994 made-for-TV adaptation by Hanna-Barbera of A Christmas Carol has a runtime of 70 minutes, making it closely more resemble a made-for-TV movie. If I had to guess, I would assume that this is also meant to coincide with the live-action Flintstones movie released earlier that same year, starring John Goodman. This prehistoric adaptation, not sure how that works, as Charles Dickens was predated in the Stone Age himself, and Christmas as a whole. Anyway, that's another totally different topic. This adaptation takes place in the actual Flintstones universe and tells the story of A Christmas Carol through a stage play that the town of Bedrock is putting on. This is a unique little idea that becomes refreshing yet entertaining and effective. The premise is a simple one. Fred gets caught up in the fact that he is starring as Ebenezer Scrooge, the leading role in Bedrock's production of the play. Fred becomes a major jerk to everyone and neglects his job and family because all he wants to do is rehearse his lines. Fred forgets to do his Christmas shopping and even forgets to pick up pebbles from Cave Care. What a jerk. Wilma is furious with Fred. In the B plot, the members of the cast begin to come down with the bedrock bug, a flu-like sickness, and Wilma has to fill in for all the roles while she deals with Fred. In the end, Fred finally sees the light and comes to regret the error of his ways, parallel to how Scrooge also does in the play. Fred finally comes out as a changed caveman, but not before finally coming down with the bedrock bug himself. Check it out. It's cute, funny, and a great intro to the story for kids. Number 4, A Christmas Carol, 1984, starring George C. Scott. This CBS television adaptation probably holds the distinction for being among one of the best made-for-TV adaptations of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. George C. Scott, by then a monumental actor in his own right, brings an interesting portrayal to the lead role of Ebenezer Scrooge. Scott, who is most well known for his roles in Anatomy of a Murder, The Hustler, Dr. Strangelove, and of course Patton, has a stern and brutish demeanor, which he brings to Scrooge, giving the character a certain gruff, seething whisper of his villainy. Never dull, you always think he's about to blow his top. Scott further demonstrates his versatility as an actor, not only in the role of such an evil and prickly character, but more so in the squealing delight of a reformed scoundrel. Aside from Scott, this adaptation is not short on additional talent. David Warner is Bob Cratchit, Susanna York as Mrs. Cratchit, and a young Michael Goff as Mr. Poole, one of the charity collectors. With its stellar acting, set production, and overall design, at the time it was released, this adaptation may have been the best Christmas Carol adaptation since 1951's version starring Alastair Sim. Number 3, Mickey's Christmas Carol, 1983. This charming adaptation is just 26 minutes in total runtime, making it a nearly perfect way to introduce children to Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol for the very first time. I still remember discovering this adaptation on TV one chilly night at home in my room, reveling in the glow of pre-Christmas childhood excitement. This is an interesting adaptation in which Scrooge McDuck actually portrays the very character after which Scrooge McDuck himself was named when Carl Barks created him in 1947. This adaptation comes in 1983, 4 years before Scrooge McDuck became firmly founded as a beloved Disney character in the classic DuckTales cartoon series. This adaptation is very abbreviated and straightforward in story points, so as to sit comfortably in its short runtime. This animated special may be short on fine story details, but never charm. It stars many classic characters from the Disney universe: Mickey and Minnie Mouse as Bob and Emily Cratchit, Scrooge's actual nephew Donald Duck as his nephew Fred, Goofy as the ghost of Jacob Marley, Jiminy Cricket as the ghost of Christmas Past, Willie the Giant as the ghost of Christmas Present, Pete as the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, and many, many more. Fun fact, the voice of Scrooge McDuck here is none other than Alan Young. Young became formerly famous in his starring role as Wilbur Post on TV's Mr. Ed. Young continued to voice the character until his passing in 2016. In the lean years prior to the late 1980s Disney Renaissance, this animated special is full of heartwarming charm, humor, and nostalgia for sure. You must check it out. Number 2, A Christmas Carol, 1951, starring Alastair Sim. What more can be said about this iconic, legendary fine wine adaptation? This adaptation has been hailed as capturing the true essence of the Dickens novel. This film takes its time through subtle acting cues and clever cinematography to focus on the finer details of Dickens' story. Alastair Sim's stellar performance can be praised for his ability to masterfully convey the range of emotional states that Scrooge goes through in the course of the story. He is totally believable as a Scrooge who is miserable because of the pain and tragedy he has endured, as well as capturing our hearts when he emerges redeemed and dancing around like a lighthearted clown. This adaptation is considered by many to be the definitive film adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and I can see how it earns that distinction, and rightly so. But there is another version that maintains its spot as my personal favorite in my heart. Number 1, A Christmas Carol, 1999, starring Patrick Stewart. This made-for-TV adaptation, produced and aired by TNT, is my personal favorite adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and to me, it doesn't get any better than this. In the 1990s, Patrick Stewart wrote and starred in his own one-man stage production of A Christmas Carol, in which he portrayed over 40 different characters. This alone makes Stewart the ideal choice to helm the legendary Dickensian lead role. After rising to megastardom as Captain Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek The Next Generation, but just coming right before the X-Men franchise solidified Stewart as a legend once again, his performance here never disappoints. Stewart is so versatile in this role as he can pull off a truly frightening Scrooge. He can conjure up a twist of humor in his discomfort of thrice being haunted in ways he cannot quite grasp. He is believable as his character's tenderness peeps through at the sight of his tragic past and the state of Bob Cratchit's current misery. And try not to smile from ear to ear as Stewart Scrooge becomes a giddy, chuckling fool with a renewed heart. The scene where his clogged-up laugh has to break loose is pure heartwarming gold. The production and visuals of this version go for a very historically accurate and gritty realism. This realism and the film's visual effects are very impressive for the time and for its made-for-TV budget. This 1999 adaptation starring Patrick Stewart is my personal favorite version of A Christmas Carol of all time. Check it out. And that, once again, guys, was my top 10 list of my personal favorite film adaptations of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Let me know down below what your list is, what your favorite versions are, and why. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell to be notified anytime the Pop Complex uploads a new video. Guys, you don't want to miss a thing. So you can also support the channel by going to patreon.com/the Pop Complex and support the channel monetarily there as well. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.